Hello, everyone. I'm Meighen Speiser from Eco America.
And I'm Dan Barry from Eco America. I direct our Path to Positive Communities program, working with communities and community leaders, and I'm very glad to be here.
And we're here today to talk to you a little bit about what Eco America is doing with Climate Resolve here in Los Angeles. But more importantly, we're here to give you some tips and tricks on how to communicate about climate change in a way that motivates action on solutions.
So we're going to get to that in a couple of minutes, but you've been sitting here for a little while, and I'm curious about the leadership that's in the room here today. We've had a bunch of wonderful leaders up here speaking already, but I want to find out who else is out here. If you are an elected or appointed official, or if you run an NGO, stand up and keep standing if you would.
Sitting is the new smoking.
Sitting is the new smoking, so stand
get
up.
Up and wiggle around.
Do you run a company that supports sustainability or has sustainable practices? Great.
Fantastic.
Okay. That's not going to do it. We need more leaders. Okay, keep standing. Keep standing. All right? So what about if you're a member of an NGO that pursues sustainability or inclusion, or you support businesses? Do you support our leaders? Great. Stand up. Have you recently made a green purchase or used transit or active transportation? Stand up.
Nice.
Stand up. Stretch out a little bit. Okay, here's the last question. Are you currently attending one of the largest climate solutions meetings in the history of LA? Please stand up.
Woo!
Please stand up, as you are able.
Yes.
And now everybody should be standing if they can. And we welcome all of your leadership. And the point that I wanted to make with this exercise is that leadership, and you can sit down now if you'd like, or you can stand. Leadership is an inclusive, renewable resource. It occurs on all levels. Okay, you don't have to own a company or run an NGO. You don't have to be an office holder to exhibit and practice leadership on these issues. In fact, we're not going to do it if we don't all pitch in. So that's why we want to talk about leadership, and we want to talk about engagement. Next slide.
Can we move slow? Yeah, 2 slides forward.
Let's go to the next one. That was you guys. All right. So our boss, Bob Perkowitz, showed some light bulbs. I thought this was a funny cartoon. We've probably already all been in this meeting. But the point about this one is that it's easy to change a light bulb. Changing a light bulb is a good thing to do. But our point and the work that we're doing with Path to Positive LA and Climate Resolve is that to really affect change, you've got to change your community. It could be your intentional community or communities. It could be your geopolitical community. But when you change your community, you can change the world. LA is proving that with the leadership that's going on here. And we've heard a lot about that, and there's a lot more to come. Leaders, what do? They engage people. They talk about solutions, and they bring people into the conversation. So that's what we're here to talk about. How, as leaders, in whatever context that we lead, we can do a better job of engaging people. We can bring them into the conversation in a way that is both about listening and also about sharing ideas. What we talk about when we talk about engagement, it's a means, it's not an end, okay? It's a process. You never finish this job. Engagement is something that you should do on a regular basis. And again, it's not just talking to people, it's listening to them as well. It's bringing their conversation and their point of view into the discussion to make it a well-rounded conversation.
Next slide, Jacob. We should bring Jacob out here at one point so we can see who this guy is with the slides. Yeah. So what we know is that Angelenos have really high embedded climate values. We've done some work that we call climate metrics, and here are some of the fantastic results. 83% of Angelenos believe we can reduce the pollution that is causing climate change. 77% believe I can reduce the pollution that's causing climate change. So we feel very empowered here in Los Angeles, and we really strongly agree. And you can see the numbers versus the national comparison are much higher. Next slide. It's not just that we have the belief, but we also have strong climate-friendly behaviors as well. 75% of the folks in Los Angeles, of you, have discussed climate change with family and friends. 71% have upgraded appliances or lighting at home. 51% of you have shifted towards more efficient forms of transportation, like biking that we heard a lot about already today. Next slide. And it doesn't stop there. 51% of you have already discussed climate change with work colleagues, and that's a huge percentage difference from national average. And you've also voted for candidates that support action on climate change. A lot of the behaviors here are really fantastic. LA, it just shows that LA is already leading the way, but there's more that we can do.
Next slide. We love to do polls. We love to get people's attitudes. It's a great way to track where they are and where we're headed with these solutions and with community engagement. We'd like you guys to take a poll today, if you could. On your phone, go ahead and go to climateday.la. There's a menu bar with a poll down. And if you go to take a poll, there are a couple of questions there. And we'd love to get your feedback on those few simple questions today. We'll tabulate results and get them back to you in a little bit. Or we'll also follow up by email, of course, when we wrap up this meeting. But we'd like to get a sense of how you compare and how you contrast with the folks that we've been tracking in our metrics poll that we've done now 2 years in LA.
Next slide. Jacob.
All right. We are so proud to be working with Climate Resolve on the Path to Positive Los Angeles program. It's the first city that we dove deep into, as we've discussed a little bit. And it really is about engaging leaders in sectors of the community in LA, empowering them and inspiring them to broaden their voice and to broaden their concept of leadership around climate and energy and sustainability. And, as we said, include more and more people into the conversation. Our sense is that we're not going to solve this if we don't make it a social good and involve as many people as we possibly can.
Jacob. Next slide. At Eco America, Bob talked about what we do earlier, but essentially we provide programs to help empower and inspire leadership among multiple constituencies. Path to Positive is for communities. We also have a Climate for Health program for the health community, and Blessed Tomorrow for faith leaders. And what these do is provide a platform for leadership, a narrative, and it provides access to other leaders who also want to lead on this issue. But all of this is informed by deep research that we do that we're going to share with you in a minute to make sure that what we're advocating for is what will work with the American people. And lastly, we bring folks together in convenings like this because when we know that we can bring folks together, you feel the energy of each other, you understand that others are leading with you, you meet others that you can collaborate with going forward, and we get farther, faster together. Next. So our research, we do a lot of research, and we encourage you to go to ecoamerica.org to download it. The thing is, it's not just research. We do the deep research to find out who's ready to move, how to move them, how to communicate with them, really words and phrases to say. But we put that all into guidance so that it's immediately applicable for you. And so why do we do this? Next slide, Jacob. So we're trying to make sure you're not like this guy. Okay, so what does this guy show us? He is frantic. He's talking about all the horrible things that are happening in climate. He's really upset about things. He's talking about polar bears instead of people. And if you could take a look at the person on the right-hand side, they're plugging their ears. And the person on the left-hand side is clearly horrified. And so that's a bit how Americans think of environmentalists when they talk about climate change. So we have the opportunity to be different. We have the opportunity to have a new message, to have emotional intelligence, so that when we talk about this issue, we're inspiring. And we all remember what Martin Luther King said. What did he say? I have a dream, right? What if he said, I had a nightmare? I don't think it would be the same result as we saw in the social movement. So let's all have a dream and let's all be like this guy. Next slide. What does that mean? It means avoiding, discussing, talking about climate change, engaging with people in a way that makes them shut down, stop listening, be afraid, run away. Instead, we have the opportunity to inspire them on their own leadership, on what the solutions are, and what the benefits are for them personally. So let's work on the inspiration. Next. We know that there's been a trajectory of communications around climate. It started with the Armageddon thing, global warming, talking about polar bears, and a lot of people were really inspired by that. But that really only inspires about 15% of the population who are really activated to do something about it. We then moved into this era where we talked about the benefits of climate action. And that's fine, but we need to take it farther. And where we need to take it is personal relevance. We heard a lot of folks today on the stage talking about what action on climate meant to them, the values that resonated, why they're doing this. A lot of it centered around family, faith, freedom. And if we go to the next slide, we can see what else Americans care about. They care about their pocketbooks. So when the mayors up here were talking about how many jobs are created locally in clean energy, 10 times that of all of the fossil fuel jobs nationwide, that's a real story, and that's what people need to hear and they care about. We heard the woman from Dignity Health talk about health and how doing something about climate change protects and preserves our health. Americans care deeply about their health, and that relates to them. If we can bring the conversation there, that will motivate more folks. And here we are on the community. Back one slide, Jacob. Now you're getting a little quick on us here. People realize we can't wait for Washington to do something about climate change. That action on climate is right here in our own communities. LA is no different, and LA is leading, and so people feel very personally tied and very active in their own community. They feel they can make a difference here. So the more that we can talk about community, the better. All right, Jacob, next slide now. From our values research, we also know 3 things. One is that Americans are more tribal than ever. What does that mean? It means that they're looking towards the leaders in their daily lives for cues on what to think and how to behave. In our very fractured media environment, Americans are not sure who they should trust, but they know they can trust their pastor. They know they can trust their doctor. They know they can trust their professors. And so it's important for us to think about who are the tribes in America and how can we make sure they have a seat at the table in the climate discussions and that they take their inspiration and their authentic message of climate into their communities. We always say that if I am a pediatrician, it's not that natural for me to talk about greenhouse gases, but I can talk about air pollution and the effect that it has on asthma in children. And so part of the tribal thought there is to also have authentic narratives for the tribes. The next thing we have to embrace is that people have a real family-first point of view. So much of America is about family, it's about getting ahead, and Americans want to take care of their family. So if we talk about solving climate change in any way that threatens the family or the American dream, it makes people shut down and back away. We can't be chastising Americans for driving SUVs. They're trying to protect their families. Instead, what we need to do is actually focus on how doing something about climate change can help protect the family's prosperity, their health, their future. We need to turn the conversation around about family and about the positive benefits of action. And that leads me to the next point. Americans are constantly told that doing something about climate change will cost them, hurt them, doesn't matter, when the exact opposite is true. And what they need to hear from us are benefits, 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 benefits. We've been really inspired by what we've heard already today, and we need to bring that inspiration forward and share it with others. Jacob, next slide. What we have to share with you is a guide called 15 Steps. So as I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of work to test messages that work, words and phrases and whole messages. But what's important in communicating about climate change is that you have your own authentic message. And so we have a stepwise process that you can follow to be a more effective climate communicator. And what we have up on the screen is kind of the initial steps on that. We're not going to go through all of them, but just to give you a taste, we'll start with the first one, which is building rapport. We need to remember that when we're talking about climate change, we're talking to humans, people with beating hearts, people with emotions, and so it's very important for us to recognize that we're human in this and to build that rapport with our audience. We call it start with people, stay with people. Know who you're talking about, know what values they have, know what their motivations are, and understand and relate to them in ways that connect with those values. Build rapport, make the conversation about people. The next is to connect on common values. As I mentioned, we all are here because we love LA. We want to see LA lead on this issue. We want to be part of that leadership. We are connecting on that common value. Find the common connections with those that you're talking with. The third step, and it's important to follow these in steps, because if you get off to the wrong track, if you come in and you start talking about climate change and assume that everybody is on the same page as you, you'll kind of cause people to shut down or run away. So it's important that you connect with them first and then acknowledge that maybe not everybody feels the same way that you do. You have to give people that psychological space to hold a little bit of a differing opinion than you. You might say something like, we might not all agree to the extent of how much humans are contributing to climate change, but we can agree that we want LA to be the best place to live for our families. And that's one way you can acknowledge it. You don't have to harp on that point a bit, but acknowledging it brings people along with you, and it helps them to listen to the rest of your message. And last is the next step is make it real. Jackie DuPont Walker talked about this a little bit earlier. To the extent that we can make our communications real about Los Angeles, about the impacts that we see here, about what we can do here, the more people will feel emotionally connected to it. Over to Dan.
Okay. So to take the conversation further, the next few steps are about inspiring action and empowering people to feel that they have agency, that they can make a difference in their community, in their family, in their church, wherever it is that they've chosen to go ahead and speak out about solutions and address how we can build better communities around climate and energy and sustainability. You have to talk about the solutions. When we talk only about the problems, as we discussed earlier, you turn people off. So it's okay to talk about the problems we face, the risks that we face as families or as communities, but you have to have a solution angle to it as well. You have to add the solution, or you don't give people hope, and you don't really bring them into the communication, into the conversation. You don't inspire their action or their leadership. And as we already said, we need every one of the leaders we can get. When you inspire and empower that action, you want to give people a sense of hopefulness, that there are positive outcomes that they can pursue, that they can participate in a city like Los Angeles. There are many solutions that are already in place that people may not know about, but they need to know about. You want to inspire and empower them to learn more, to participate, and then bring other people into the solutions with them. Talking about the personal benefits and focusing on those benefits is a way to connect with people more deeply. You show that you care about them and you care about their values. And again, we can't talk enough about how important connecting on those values and those benefits are to having a positive, constructive conversation with people. But you also have to have an ask, okay? So as an advocate or a leader, again, in any setting that you choose to have these conversations, always have at least one thing to ask them to do, a takeaway. We have a takeaway here. We'll be asking you to stay involved with us through Path to Positive LA and through all the work you're already doing. You always need to make sure you give somebody something positive they can do so that they feel their empowerment is sort of baked in a little bit more. And anybody who's worked on a political or issue campaign will understand our last point on this bubble, point number 9. Sequence matters. Message discipline is important. These are important to do in the right order. As Meighen said, in order to draw people in and keep them with you. We know from our research that if you start off on the wrong foot and people leave, it's very difficult to get them back. And as a reminder, that is a trap that we often fall into. That's that guy that we showed on the previous slide who was talking about polar bears, and really, his message was, we're all going to die, okay? Well, we are all going to die, but we're not all going to die from climate change, okay? There is a lot of hopefulness out there, and there's a lot of hope that we can solve these problems.
And we have a lot of guidance around strengthening the message, but we definitely encourage you to download our 15 Steps Guide and see for yourself and try your own messages, develop your own authentic message on this issue. Next slide.
We have a great partnership here with Climate Resolve. Jonathan and Christina and the entire staff over there, they have been working since 2015 to build a very impressive leadership circle, and only a portion of them are shown up here. They have more than 150, I think approaching 200 visible leaders from all sectors of LA's society and community. And they're bringing this message to their own constituents, or their customers, or their association members. And that's the job that we ask them to do: broaden the conversation, engage their communities. We're very, very proud about this, and we want to encourage you to join Path to Positive LA as well. The way that we broaden the conversation is having more voices. We all stood up earlier and expressed a form of leadership and inclusion in Path to Positive LA and in solving LA's climate issues and advancing solutions. So we've only scratched the surface with the sorts of resources and materials that we can offer you as individuals, as leaders. And we'd like you to go ahead and join Path to Positive LA. It's a very simple thing. Go to the website and just sign up. That'll give you access to the resources we've talked about. There are future events that we're planning through this program. We're always releasing new research as well. So some of the metrics that we talked about, we'll be refreshing them. We have other polls that we do on a regular basis. So there's really a lot that you can get from joining this program. Being here is an important first step. Our ask, again, is to join with us and stay with us in the years to come so that we bring more people into the conversation.